and I end up investing about one, right? And that is me investing in 0.8%. And that doesn't mean in any capacity that the other 119 companies whom I haven't invested in are bad, or not ready yet. It's down to a few things. They don't fit my thesis as an investor. I'm not right fit for them sometimes as well, and or other things have happened in their business and we're on our side. So and sometimes I'll see companies I won't invest today, but I end up investing months or a year later or so. And that's also healthy. That happens all the time. So when people get a no from investors, and I've been there as a founder myself, it's not always a no, it's just a no for today, right? Potentially. But this is what, and I don't think this is too dissimilar to how other investors look at deals as well and their numbers. I think maybe some may be slightly higher, but most probably sit around this mark, around the 1% mark of investments. So when you're seeing an investor, you could be one of the 120 or so. And so it isn't just saying no to you, there's a bunch of other companies as well. So I got asked this all the time, what should I do for investors to invest in my business? My answer is simply just work on your business, right? That is always the best answer to that question. This is a screenshot from it was a massive Zoom meeting, right, with loads of founders, investors, and someone put in, where do you start with a pitch deck for their brand? I was like, you start with sales, right? You want to go, and it wasn't a pitch deck for investors that this founder was asking about. It was just creating a pitch deck for their brands to show off or to just tell people about it. And I was like, that's such a waste of time. Like, if you have no sales, don't bother doing that at all. Like, you want to just be focused on your business and working on it. Friends of mine joke and say I should get a t-shirt saying I would invest in a spreadsheet, because I would. Right? I would, and that all that means is I just want to see validation. And I don't care if that is in a spreadsheet, in a text message service, in Instagram DMs, via email. I don't care if it's manual in real life and you've got physical letters at your house, whatever it is, from customers. I just want to see that you've got validation as an early stage investor. And a lot of investors do as well. We just want to see validation. And again, how that validation exists is in the final, if it's a piece of software, whatever it is. We don't need to see a great magically designed piece of software. If you've got one, that's wonderful. But ultimately, we just want to see that people actually need this thing, and that you validate that people need it by like, hey, I'll walk you through an example. Now. So here's a good example. This is an Instagram page called Thing Testing. This is March 2019. Started by a woman called Jenny. And when she started it, you can see she had about 200 likes. She started, I think when the page started, of course, it got to a few hundred people. That's fine. All she was doing was, I think this is the first post. Here's why I'm Thing Testing. And all she was doing was posting direct to consumer products, right? That means physical products that you can order on the internet and receive directly as a consumer, such as AirPods or anything like water bottles, whatever it is. She would just post them on her page and just and writing a review about the product. Nice and simple, right? She was like, hey, this is why I want to do it. And she started that March 2019. Come June 2019, again, look closely, she's almost at 40,000 followers from the initial 200 she had, because she had been consistent. She was doing this every single day. And what she was validating, and again, the validation piece, she was validating that people wanted reviews of these type of products, but in a seamless, beautiful, easy to understand a platform on Instagram. And she didn't go and build a website. She didn't go and she didn't go build a website. She didn't go try to build some software for it or anything. She just used Instagram for that validation. She had an assumption and proved that correct with Instagram. So she got about 40,000 followers. You can see the page is verified within a few months because she was super consistent. And at this point, what she was doing was people were then sending her products. Instead of her just taking pictures of products randomly, they were sending her products to review, like, hey, you can review my products. And then they'll pay her. But it was all manual. Again, so there was a situation where people were DMing her, hey, I want you to review my products. She'd say, send me the products. They send her the products. This all happened via email as well. And then they would end up sending a PayPal or Monzo link or something will get sent out. They make a payment. And then once she gets approved, then she'll take a picture of the product, post it and write a review. Super manual, but she was consistent with it. And again, she got validation for a product review platform or product review site, all via Instagram, free. And then August 2019, there's Jenny. She announced that she's leaving her job. And for what it's worth, when she's doing this, I remember a lot of my friends were like, oh, this thing. So no, even here, a lot of my friends, she's announced that she's leaving her job to do this thing full time. and stuff. And I was excited because I've been watching it from the beginning. I was like, oh, it's just an Instagram page. And then she validated that people actually wanted products reviewed. And then she got some capital. She raised about £250,000 or £300,000 or so from some angel investors to turn it into a product review platform or website. So it started as this super simple, free post on Instagram that led to several posts. She got that validation, and then she got some investment, right? And that is a perfect example of getting validation free, or using something like Instagram, Twitter, email, text messages, a spreadsheet, whatever it is. So here's something that I'm going to talk to investor updates. Here's something that everyone should do, right? And this is not just for investors you want. This is also for investors. This is not just for investors who invest in your business, but also for investors who you want. And you can send them 2 different types of updates. That's fine. But I'll talk to what you can send them. And the purpose of these updates is that you can just keep them updated on your business and progress, and actually how you're getting on, most importantly. Because yes, I can see the updates in the business, but it makes me think about you as the founder. I'm like, oh, this founder is able to achieve X and Y and overcome these challenges. I'll show you an example. So first, I'm going to talk about frequency. So I'll show you the content and format of an actual update. And these are super helpful because, again, we can track your progress, and at some point there'll be some inflection point and a catalyst, and we'll go, actually, we now want to have a extended or follow-up conversation, and then we want to get involved and potentially invest in the business. So I think the best format for this is monthly. So you can see here, here's one of the companies: August, September, from the bottom, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. Very consistent, right? Yes, fine. February, March, and you've got October, November, which have doubled up because it didn't send an update the previous month. But thankfully, they then came back and sent the update for 2 months. Because what we noticed that when people start sending updates and then they stop, when they go quiet, there's usually something wrong with the business, right? You create a simple format for it, and I'll talk to you what that format does look like. Again, it's something that it's good to do for people who have invested in your business and people who haven't. And of course, the content in which you send to people who haven't invested in your business, if you have other investors as well, can be slightly different. You can redact or miss out certain elements, of course, like financials.
So very quickly, just to go back to that one very quickly. For those that haven't invested, how many times have you seen someone, like how long have you tracked someone sending monthly updates and not invested versus actually someone that you have gone and invested in, just to get a sense of how long they should stay in that pipeline for?
Sure, that's a great question. So so someone I have invested in, before investing, I think about 8 or 9 months, right? And then make decisions to invest. Those I haven't invested in, and admittedly, there's some I haven't, and it's been going for a year and a half or so. But things could change over next year, right? The 8-9 months person, they just happen to have not have met me prior to month 1, so they didn't have the opportunity to send me anything. So had they been sending me stuff since they started, I would have been reading them every month and maybe invested earlier, or maybe not. So it may have been a year and a half as well. But I think as long as you're running the business, but you should definitely ask people, are you interested in receiving these updates? Would you like to receive updates in this business? But I say yes to a lot. Sometimes I'm like, hey, let's just have a quarterly call instead, or send me updates so we can do a call as well. It just depends. I think like it's healthy to send out. It's healthy to even write it out, because once in a while I open updates and if companies I haven't invested in, but I'll do work for them. I'll go, hey, I've got all these thoughts and I'm going to introduce you to 1 or 2 people who could be helpful for you. Or let me introduce you to this other investor. Just because I've opened a rant, sometimes I don't open up certain updates for 3-4 months, and I'll randomly open it month 5, and I've got a perfect introduction for you based on the content of their email. So sometimes it's healthy just to keep them going.
Yeah, and that's in that sense of 12 to 18 months, just to give that, compared to other types of finance, that long lead time where you hear nothing and then suddenly something changes and you have an investment at a different level overnight.
100%. It's so interesting. I was talking to some friends about this, that obviously friends with personal friends, it's always different, right? Where if you're personal friends, if you don't communicate anything in X amount of time, it's like, oh, we haven't heard from you ages, you're a bit silent, whatever it is. And there's that social dynamic to that. But with entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs and investors, you cannot hear from someone in 2 years, and all of a sudden you hear from them and it's like, oh, hey, okay, great, let's have a meeting, or let's meet up and let's talk. and then you build a relationship from there. And this is someone you would have known probably for a long time, but not helping them because they're working or something. And I think the same thing applies here. I think you've got to just keep the people who you do want involved eventually. You've got to just keep them in the loop because you never know what can happen.
Yeah.
Anything can change the market.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Andy.
So here's a good example of an update. Forget the actual numbers themselves. This is a good performing company, right? And I think people look at this update and sometimes they don't know what to think. But here's the structure of every type of update. So it starts off with metrics. So KPIs, those are key performance indicators, and those are basically all those. I think it's always helpful to have about 3 to 5 there. If you have, I think Matilda, she's the founder of a email app, a B2B email app called Front. So Matilda has, she has 8 there, 8 or 9 there. And I think, but one is default alive. But I think the rest, the point of these metrics are, if these metrics increase month to month, the business is potentially doing well. So you can see here, paying companies is one. So the more paying companies you has, the better. MR, which is recurring revenue, monthly recurring revenue, that increases the company's doing better. The only thing which would decrease here, which would be good to decrease, is customer churn. And churn basically means when a customer leaves you. So if that decreases, then clearly the business is probably doing better anyway, especially paying customers increases. So what you should have in your investor updates is KPIs, metrics, right at the beginning of it, that just give everyone an indication of how the business is doing. Then you cover good events and bad events, so highlights. And the reason you cover good events is obvious. You can tell people what's gone well in the month or the period, if it's monthly, bi-monthly, or quarterly. You have bad events. And the reason you have bad events is for 2 reasons. One, because we want to see what's gone wrong in the business. So we can see how you overcome it. But 2, we may be able to help the reader, if it's a customer, if it's an investor, if it's team members you send this to, someone may be able to help with one of the bad events in the business. So definitely send like those out. I think a lot of people avoid sending these emails sometimes because 1 or 2 good things would happen, or nothing good would happen this month, but loads of bad things happened. And sometimes when I read those, I'm like, actually, I appreciate that transparency. That's really important. I know I'm dealing with someone who can be honest and has integrity, and they can face up to things. They don't hide from they don't run away from their fears or from any problems in the business. They face them head on, and they want to overcome a challenge. And this whole game of business and startup entrepreneurship isn't easy anyway. So that's always a massive positive. So again, you start with metrics, you have good events, good highlights, bad events, lowlights, and then you have an ask. And some people say to put the ask at the beginning. I prefer at the end because I get all the context and I understand why you're asking for whatever it is you're asking for. Put it at the beginning if you want, but I see a mix. I just prefer at the end personally. Always have an ask. I think that's important because it then gives, once in a while, some founders don't, they just say, hey, no, ask this month. That's absolutely fine. But if there's anything you need, absolutely anything, put it at the end of that email. And yeah, you never know what will come back. And the last thing I'll say about this is that what's important is how clear it is. You can open this on a so I always say a mobile phone screen. I think we're more at home now. So if you open it on your laptop, you can really see, everything's super clear. It's super concise. I don't have to scroll for too long to get through the whole email. It's really good. And I can consume all of the information in this email in the space of 2 minutes. That's a good update, right? And it's a small thing, but it's psychological, because when investors receive anything long and they get to it later, that may never happen. And it's not because they're avoiding you or they don't like the business. They haven't had the opportunity to understand or get to know the business because they've been put off by a super long email. No one wants to read a book in an email. So it's a small detail, but I'll say keep it clear, keep it concise. Or something that I used to do actually as a founder, I used to send myself the update first, email it to myself. And if I couldn't read it on my mobile phone screen without scrolling, I wouldn't send it. Right? And it was a very good discipline because then everyone read the updates. Everyone read the updates. I guess if it happens to be a bit longer, that's also fine. But then what you do is you make sure that on a mobile phone screen, you can at least see the beginning of the end, like the bad highlights or whatever it is, right? So you know, oh, actually, it's just going to be after this, there'll be an ask, and then the email will be over. So there isn't a psychological burden on anybody. I want to make it super light for you to engage with my business as an entrepreneur. And I think that's what all entrepreneurs should be doing. Make it super light for everyone to engage, if it's customers, if it's team members, especially investors. Industry updates. So hardly anyone sends industry updates to investors. I think it's a good idea to send industry updates. So there's this company who I met with. I got introduced to actually by a good friend of mine. So met with them, and then they wanted to meet again. They sent me loads of emails, and I just missed all of the emails. My inbox is so crazy. I just missed all of the emails. And then one day they sent this email, and it just said press coverage today. Name of the company, press coverage today. I was like, what's this? Opened it, and yes, hope you had a lovely bank holiday, etc., etc. And basically, all the things they told me in the meeting prior to that, they had just validated them or proven that those were true with actual links. The BBC, The Guardian, The Sun, and City AM, just news publications talking about their industry and talking about them, but also mostly talking about their industry, how there's an increase in that industry of people doing X or Y, how there's a lot of activity there, how the world is going in that direction. And I was like, this is interesting. So I followed up. We had another meeting. I introduced them to some of my investors. My investors then invested, and the company's gone on and grown quite well now. And just an example of different ways to get investor attention. And you can send them updates, keep them engaged. But there's also stuff like this, because sometimes people need external validation, external examples. And if they've got these newspaper articles that investors love reading on like the market, whatever it is, or if they just read it in the paper, it's not only is it a brand name validation, it's also someone who's probably done some research external to the company also believes in this idea. So they'll take a closer look. So industry updates are also a good idea. Now, the email to send to investors, right? This is the email I sent to my investors for a company I eventually invested in, actually, called Trimit. This is before I invested. So, and I think this is that same format as the emails I sent out myself as a founder. That's why all my emails look like this. So, hi to all the investors, or hi to X person. You can see the founder of Trimit, UK's first mobile barbershop. A good friend of mine is raising this amount of money. I'll say the short video here. I don't know anyone puts videos in emails, by the way, or video pictures. It's not for me. It just isn't. Especially in an email, I'm just not tapping on it. If I tap on it, I'm like, this is, unless it's a minute long, I'm not. Someone sent me a 59-minute video the other day. I actually thought it was a joke, and I actually went through the video. I was just kind of fast forward every 5 minutes, and I was like, no, they can't possibly be talking about their startup, and they were. And I was like, that's incredible. I'm not going to listen to that. I replied and let them know. I said, hey, because that's all they sent. They didn't send any other information. They said, here's the thing you need to know about my startup. And I was like, this is actually way too long for anyone to consume. However, if you've got a note or a deck or something, be deeping it over, please. So I think it's 58 minutes, but whatever. So here you've got one line. So one line describing the product description with a link. And it's important. So there's a link to video. If you've got a link to the website, that's usually a better thing. They check out the site, understand what you do, in somewhat more detail, because the site will have more information on it. That's healthy. You want to attach an executive summary, which is a one-pager on the business, or an actual deck, a pitch deck. And I'll talk to, I believe you may have an understanding as to what a pitch deck is, which is a 10 to 15 page presentation on the actual business itself, covering the problem, the solution, the size of the market, traction, or any data you have so far, how you make money, the team, the opportunity itself, the market going forward, etc. But then there's also something called an executive summary, or one pager, which just is a nice summary of one-page summary of the whole business. And I'll show you an example of one. And those are usually good for these emails. So in these emails, again, you start at the top, and here's one line of what the business is, here's how much the business is raising, and if there's any money committed, you should also say that as well. So then you put some company highlights in, and highlights can be, I think it's always good, again, with the same thing as the KPIs and metrics in the monthly email update. It's always helpful to have 3 to 5 highlights. Some people put a bit more. I don't think you need to go on. I think you should need to pick the best 3 to 5 highlights. And again, 3 to 5 highlights, no vanity stuff here. Just things that talk to the problem being solved for customers and how the business is performing. That's it. So here you can see Trimit had £2.40 CAC. CAC is customer acquisition cost. So for every customer being acquired, Trimit was spending £2.40. But for every booking that we're getting, the average booking was £26. So you see they're spending £2.40 and get average booking was £26. It's profitable. And then 37% of customers are coming back, which is decent rate, especially in the early days. Another highlight was max capacity bookings achieved 2 weeks post-launch, after they launched. And that's again another good metric that actually we can't meet capacity, so I need money. And then the last one was just, I don't like people do celebrity stuff, but I guess because of the nature of the business, having celebrities like DJ Charlie Soft, Sneak, Gold Link and stuff, meant something to the business because it increased visibility, helped in marketing, and validate that people do need this product does serve everyone. Yes, so you can see here again, product description, 1 line product description, always 1 line. If you can do 2 lines, okay, don't do more than 2. That's annoying in an email. Or maybe 3, depending on what it is. But that's if you need to be detailed, but keep it succinct. 1 line, attach a 1-pager or a deck, have some highlights about the business. Again, look at the spacing here. Everything's super well spaced out. It's so easy to digest this email. That's, again, that psychological thing. It makes a massive difference. Massive difference. Because if you can get to the information quick and it's key information, then I'll know that I can send it on to the right people. I then know what to focus on in my reply. I think it could then be more easily in cluster as well. Otherwise, you don't want me looking for key information in the email, because then I'll just get lost. I'll move on to my next email. So yes.
And how's Trimit doing now?
Good. So this is when was this email sent? There's a date there, 2018. So Trimit, we're getting 2022. In 2 elements. So one side is Trimit here was raising 550. Actually, interestingly, Trimit was raising 550k here. Trimit didn't raise all that money. Trimit went to raise 700, then scaled back to 550, and then actually couldn't raise the 550, ended up raising £220,000 instead. Which happens all the time. People just don't hear about it. They'll hear, oh, this company raised this money. They're usually always raising more than that, but people fall short. I did the same thing. So, but Trimit has then gone on and raised a few million now, and is doing phenomenally well. With the business even slightly pivoted per se. It was just a like an Uber for haircuts. You open up the app, you tap a button, and a van comes to you, gives you a great hair experience. Now pivoted to B2B, so we've got all these franchisee barbers everywhere. By the end of this year, we're on course to have, in the next few months, 200 barbers, 200 vans on the road. And this is when we just had 1 van, and this is 3.5 years ago. So some of the business is going to done remarkably well. And thanks for asking. I didn't even think about that. It's going to, so this email actually got 2 of my investors invested just like that. After they saw the email, they met him within 15 minutes. They invested. Obviously, they met the person, but they were like, "This is impressive." And he said in both meetings, all they did was speak about like the first line, the CAC, how much it costs to acquire the customers, the average booking and retention. That's it, because it was super succinct. Like, hey, it gave them a talking point. They didn't have to look for someone to talk about or have anything in this. This is what's the most important in this business. So yeah, it's business that's gone and done well. Right. So here's the 1-pager for Trimit that we used as well, that we attached. It looks like the App Store because Dan, the founder's been over creative in someone's opinion somewhere. But ultimately, what's important about a 1-pager is that it has everything that your pitch deck would have in it. So you'd have, again, the name of the business, a 1-line description. You can see at the top the problem, or have the solution. If you can put in screenshots of the product, that's great as well. It doesn't always fit. We'll have the business model, how you make money. We'll have the size of the market. Have any traction, or that's any data or customer information you have so far, how it's going. Have info on the team. And then you'll have how much you're looking for, of course, how much you've raised, and how much you are raising, and it's all there in this 1-pager. And again, a 1-pager makes things super easy to digest. So for the investor, you always want to think psychologically, actually, what's the best way to get information to them that they can understand this business really quickly without having to spend too long reading, or and what can I give them that's really simple for them to go back to as well, and make them want to go back. So, wrap up, I've got this is what investors look for. So here's some good signals. And this is what I look for mostly. Obsession / unique insight. And the reason you want to see obsessed founders is because it's that unique insight piece. If you are so obsessed with whatever the problem is or whatever the sector is, you will land on something. You will have some sort of assumption or theory that nobody else has, or that everyone else has missed. And that unique insight may be your catalyst and enabler for this massive organization to be built and a great solution to be formed. Ability to run through walls. I say it all the time. I don't want any founders, especially diverse founders, I don't want any founders running through walls anywhere in the world, right? Because walls aren't good. But when you know this, when you start a business or you have an idea, you're getting going, then a wall hits you. A wall just drops out of nowhere. You're like, huh? What's this wall? But you have to be able to get around it or get over it, go through it somehow, right? And I don't really ask for examples of that, but I think we see it on the way when you're in a relationship with you, and again, that's what those updates do. When you've got problems or the bad part of the update, under the good, the lowlights. Well, next month we can see how you've overcome those, or how you run through those walls. That's really important. And of course, I spoke to validation and the thing testing. Instagram page is a great example of that. Just validation that people actually need this thing. I don't care how it exists. Just show me that people need it, and that may be good enough. Some red flags. Vanity metrics. So oftentimes people get caught up in a bit of the startup, what I call the startup game, and they just present unimportant metrics about their business, right? So years back, 2013, almost 10 years ago, I remember in my office, in my building, my investors just housed a bunch of us together, a bunch of companies they invested in. And every Friday, we just decided to get together and start sharing parts of our business with each other. And one of the founders one day came up and said, hey, we've got 2,000 followers on Twitter, I think it was, or Instagram or something. And by the way, I think it was Instagram. And it was Twitter. And back then, 2,000 followers on Twitter, to get 2,000 followers in a week, it's quite impressive. However, they were a B2B product selling to schools. And everyone was like, oh, that's so incredible. And I was like, wait. I was like, how many sales have you made this week? And they were like, oh, that's not the metric we're talking about. And I was like, what? I was like, how many sales have you made? They're like, oh, I haven't made any sales this week, but we've got all these teachers following us. And I was like, is this a long play or is this, I don't understand. And it was just a vanity metric. It was, hey, we are hiding behind this number and we're presenting this number of downloads. And the people that founders do it all the time, number of downloads of our app instead of the number of active users every week or every day or every month on this product. So I feel like vanity metrics is a red flag. A lack of focus. So if you're doing too many things in the business itself, that's a red flag. I think as far as that's even one of my founders yesterday was talking about, hey, we're focusing on what was super customers interested, but we're really interested in this other part, building a consumer element to the business. What do you lot think? As me and one of the investors. And I was like, there's no way. I was like, you have to focus, right? Like you just have to, and this happens in the beginning, it happens along the way. Even as companies are growing really big, some of my late stage companies are like, hey, like maybe we can look at this. I'm like, you should stay focused, right? Like I've said to people all the time, don't fear focus. Focus is great, and it'll get you the win in the end. So a red flag is vanity metrics, a lack of focus, and again, no validation. I think that's a red flag because nowadays it's super easy to validate stuff. You can build websites for free on the internet. You can just use a spreadsheet, use a text message, use Instagram as you've seen, and get some validation, depending on what it is, of course. So no validation is probably a red flag unless you are like very deep technology, deep tech, or something along those lines. Yeah, and I believe that's it. Happy to take any questions or answer any questions I haven't answered already.
Thanks, Andy. That's amazing. As ever, the level of transparency you have for the process is fantastic, and it's just so important. We have a couple of questions coming in, but just before we do that, do you mind going back to your portfolio slide very quickly? Yeah. Just thought it'd be interesting. Just two questions, I guess, about this. The first is, I think the first time founders and the percentage of these which have diverse founders, is there like a business here that we've talked about Trimit? Is there another business that sort of speaks out to you as a founder who wouldn't traditionally have sought angel capital to maybe get going, but has gone on to raise an initial angel round and has used that as a springboard for growth? Sure. That you could speak to just from this portfolio?
So that's a great question. And I think one of them, I think there's a few. So I think a great example would be, who should I choose? So I think this is less of a venture capital type esque business. Gaudem in 2019, the one that's in the middle to the left, Gaudem. And so it's a new media company sharing the perspectives of women and non-binary people of color. And it's a media business. And it's so interesting because venture capital dollars don't usually go to media businesses. So media businesses, the revenue model is usually advertisers and marketing campaigns from these big brands. And I think this founder would never have sought it, but because she heard of Backstage Capital, or she just discovered it, she was told about it by a friend of mine. She then, I didn't tell my friend, the friend even talked to me about it. Just said, hey, she just happy to tell me, hey, one of your friends mentioned it, who's a mutual. I said, okay. She said, I want to apply. I want to talk to you about maybe investing in my business. I've never thought about before. And that helped take the business from this team of, at the time, I believe two and a half people. Like everyone was just part time. Really, she was not making the money, as not taking a salary in the business, but paying for one person to work full time, and the revenue that was being driven was paying the other person part time in the business, and it enabled that business to go a year later to go to 12 people, to be looking at just shy of $1 million in revenue for the year. I think that's a fine example of someone who would never have pursued venture capital. She hadn't even heard of investment before. So even when we gave her the money, I think we gave her $100,000, £75,000 at the time. She was like, "Do I pay it back? When do I pay it back? What do I do with it?" Like as if it were a loan. I was like, "No, it's not a loan. We get equity." And she was like, "Oh, do you want like 40% of the business?" I was like, "No, we're taking like," what was it at the time? I think it was 5%. I was like, "We're taking 5%." She had no clue about it, and but she's gone on and built a good company that's going to last and is important for the world that they're in.
That's a great example. That actually tees up my second question, and then we're going to go to a couple from the chat as well, which is, why, with your entrepreneur hat on now, why would you take on an angel investor over, say, debt or other types of capital? What would be the main reason for you that you'd want to do this?
Sure. So I'm a bit of a apologetically, I'm a bit of a detailed person. So I would say, if you haven't got to take on any external capital, do not. However, or investment, do not. And not because it's negative, more because you can keep equity in your business, of course. But the reason I would take on investment as opposed to a loan is because if, let's say it's 100,000, let's say it's 50K in the business, right? If I get a 50K loan, I have to probably start paying that back the next month. A small amount, but I start paying it back. If I get not just cash from the investor as equity, I give them a percentage, and I get to keep 100% that capital to help grow the business. And there's a slight difference, but you really get to put that money all to work. When if you've got a loan, you have to be thinking about paying it back, and you can't really use all the capital in the business. Yes, it may drive more. Hopefully, it should drive revenue that you're able to pay back really easily eventually. But I think that's a slight difference. And also with people who you get investment from can be helpful. If you get a loan from, let's say, a bank or somewhere, there's a high chance the bank's not going to do anything for you. They'll give you the capital with some okay terms, maybe, hopefully. But that's it. When people may be able to actually help with the business, help you grow, help you with hiring, help you personally. I spend so much time with founders personally on the phone all the time and meeting them just to help them on their journey as founders, especially first-time founders. And you can see I've invested in quite a lot of them as well.
Amazing, Andy. Tarek, do you want to ask your question? I can also read it out, but if you feel free to come in and just ask directly. Tarek, can you hear me? If not, I'll just read from chat. Okay, we might have lost Tarek. Tarek, I'm really hoping you can hear this. If not, we're recording.
I think he's frozen. Yeah.
You think he's frozen at the worst time. Anyway, let me read the question. Hopefully he rejoins us when you're answering this, because I think it's quite an interesting one. He says, it's been said that in order to raise money, you should do 50 meetings a month, which kind of tallies with what you say about how many pitches you hear. Yeah. However, LinkedIn has a limit of 100 connections a month, 100 connections a week, which is 40 a month. You can tell that Tarek's also a detailed person, Andy, because he said if only 8 out of 10% of those reply and 1 to 4% actually schedule meetings, how can you connect investors other than LinkedIn if you haven't got the networks?
Sure. So I think 2 or 3 things. So I think firstly is and every day I'd email.
Andy, just give me a second, because Tarek just rejoined. Tarek, we're just asking Andy about your question, by the way, just so you know where we are. Just so you know.
Sorry, my internet cut off at the very, very, very amazing moment.
I literally, so Charlie said you're frozen. I just thought he's sitting remarkably still. I did. I was like, he's sitting remarkably still.
I'm hotspotting from my phone just because I'm not gonna go and connect and all of that. So let's hope for the best. All right.
Yeah, go ahead, Andy. Sorry, I just wanted to
that's the question. So I used to email quite a lot of investors every day, right? Like every single day. And same thing with companies I talk to. You're right, LinkedIn does have a limit. I think another place, I'll share these links, another place is AngelList. And what I do first actually is I look at companies So I look at startups online and I'll put in, let's say you put in a competing startup to you or startup in your sector or at your stage. Let's say it's called Trimit. I put in Trimit raises or has raised, and it will tell me how much they've raised, and usually highlights the investors who've also invested in that company. And I'll do it with every single company who's at my stage or in my sector and who could have relevant investors for me. And I'll create this whole list. And then I'd Google those people, I'd find their personal websites, their Twitters, I'd DM them on Twitter. I'll DM them on Twitter. I'll send them cold emails, and I do that every single day. And a place to do it is also AngelList, so angel.co. And then I'll grab AngelList up, and I'll grab it afterwards and send it over. So angel.co. That's a place you go to. You can put in a startup. You can read some information on them, but also it's usually got the investors linked to it. And so AngelList is a good place to find investors. And I think and so two last things. If you meet with any investor, you should always ask them for an introduction to another investor. Always, even if they don't invest. And some investors go, oh, I don't like to make introductions if I don't invest. I ask them, I don't care. Right? Like, so for example is my last startup, I remember I met this guy, good guy, his name's Mark, and he after the second meeting, he invested about 10 minutes into the meeting. He was like, I'm in, or 15 minutes in. He was like, I'm in. I was like, great, put 50K personal money. And at the end of the day, when he was leaving, I was like, oh, hey, how do we meet again? And he was like, through this guy, Nick or something. And I was like, who the hell is Nick? And he was like, no, Nick. And I was like, okay. And he left. I remember thinking about it for ages. I was like, who's Nick? I went to my inbox. I went and searched Mark's name. I was like, let me go back to a bunch of emails. I was like, introduction to Mark from Nick. I was like, who the hell is Nick? When I looked at Nick's email, I was like, how do I know Nick? So Nick I actually met Nick. So let me go back a little bit. So I went and pitched, I reached out to some investors I know, pitched to one of them. Eventually, the same conversion, you reach out to people you know, not all of them even take meetings. One of them I know took a meeting. He said, it's not for me. And I said, I didn't know I do. I said, every meeting, please introduce me to anyone you know who this could be good for, or this would be a good fit for. I did that. Weeks passed, didn't hear anything. That's fine. I was in other meetings anyway, and reaching out to people. He then introduced my company introduced me to a friend of his, someone he knew, another investor. I met that person. That person didn't invest, right? That person, I think after 20 minutes, was like, I don't really like this. And I was like, fair enough, whatever. So then I said, hey, same thing again. Oh, please introduce me to anyone you know who this is relevant to. Cool. A few weeks later, he introduced me to this guy, Mark. I met this guy, Mark, 2 meetings in, 15 minutes, and this guy invests, right? So I say that to say, anyone you meet, you have to ask for an introduction to. I don't care if they don't want to do it. I don't care. If they don't want to do it, they won't do it anyway. And there's no one holding anything to anyone's head, just getting them to do anything. So always do that. I just got money from this guy, Mark. And guess what? I didn't raise money to meeting 62 when I was raising money then. And then the rest of the money came in from meeting 62 to 71. I think there's only 2 no's at that point. I think Mark was the second money in. Right? And he didn't even, the rest kind of came in because the rest of the money was coming in admittedly. He didn't really, that's not why he came in. So, but he helped the momentum. That money, yes, helped the momentum. So again, any conversation you have, always ask. And you'd be surprised because it could be a few weeks later, it could be a few days later, it could be a month later or 2. Someone could just meet someone who's relevant to you, or remember someone and go, I should make the introduction to this person. So I should send them something. So yeah.
Andy, between 62 and 71, nothing for 62 contacts, conversations.
Nothing.
And then the full round and 9 conversations.
Yeah, matter of fact, oversubscribed. I went to his 400K or 400 and something, 440K or whatever it was, and it ends up at 730 or 780, I think it was, or something.
Tarek,
so,
I hope that helps. Tarek, I know you're in the middle of all at the moment, Tarek. So I hope that gives you some courage to keep going.
And listen, Tarek, right? It's a numbers game, definitely, but it doesn't mean I think anyone should sit there in all those meetings either. I think we have to be more targeted, more specific. And what I'll say about LinkedIn, I don't know what you're doing with LinkedIn now, but one thing I would say is all these companies go public every day, right? We see companies that go on the stock market and they're all going public. If I were a founder raising money today, I would actually find companies who are in my sector and find the companies who've gone public, and I'll reach out to all of the people there who are in any managerial positions or anyone who's been there long enough time to have any equity. And I'd reach out to them and go, hey, can I talk to you about this business, my business? And even just ask them for some advice, because these people do nothing but reach out to me because the only people asking them for money, and by the way, they've all got money now because the company's gone public. The only people asking them for money are their friends and family, literally. they don't even know what to do with their capital. And if it's in your sector, and especially if it's an old competing company, a company which competes with you or something, these people, most likely they have ideas that they can't really express because the company's so large, and they've got thoughts that they want to probably try to be innovative with, that they don't have the opportunity to at that company. So you kind of present them as an opportunity to get on the ground, financially support an entrepreneur, and be on the journey with them. Reach out to all those people. I would be doing that night and day. There isn't a company that would go public in my sector that the people who work there wouldn't have heard of me. Like, it's just not, it wouldn't be possible. I would reach out to everyone. And
I'm really sorry, Andy. I'm gonna have to stop you there. I would love to keep going, but we've only got 4 minutes left before we get kicked out, and I just need to wrap up the session. Andy, thank you so much. I've chucked links to your LinkedIn. I hope that's all right. Actually, I did not ask your permission.
All good. We'll talk about LinkedIn. It's all good. Yeah.
And also a link to our guide, which also has some materials from Andy, including the deck he used from a previous session. We will re-upload the content from today, which is great. Good to see how it's changing as well over time, Andy. Thank you so much. We're going to quickly just wrap up the session by just showing you the support that we can offer. And if you don't mind stopping screen sharing very quickly, I will just reshare. Andy, thank you so much. It was always such a pleasure to hear from you. Yeah, I love what you're doing and how you talk about it. So thank you so much. If you don't mind just staying on for just until the end of the breakout, which is 3 minutes, just so if anyone else has any questions, hit him up in chat, direct message him and get him whilst we've got him for 3 more minutes, and then we're going to end the breakout. So guys, just to end this session on angel investment, just to say what Turn can offer you as a follow-up. So if you're listening to Andy and you're thinking about angel investment, or you're deep into it, Tarek, as I know you are, then Turn can offer further support. We can help with valuations and term sheets, how you actually value your business. We can help you preparing to pitch. We can also help showcase your business. How we do that is mainly through partnerships. So we work with Seed Legals, who I'm sure, Andy, you've worked with before, who do a lot of work around making things SEIS compliant, but also do a lot of cap table. Andy, thumbs up, thumbs down for Seed Legals. Do you like them? Thumbs up, great. I'm pleased you said that, otherwise I would have been screwed. We also do a lot of work preparing to pitch with people like Atomico, who Andy's also worked with in the past, who are really experienced latter stage investors, but can really provide value to early stage businesses. And we will try and do at least one showcase a year where we will try and connect you and bring in angel investors to hear your pitches and really look towards being the first in to help you support and raise capital. We often do that in a partnership with a C-stage venture capital firm called Ada Ventures. So if you want to find out more about angel investment, you're interested to find out more, I've shared links to this in the chat. I will also follow up afterwards. You will get access to this, but we have our angel guide, which is not called Being, that's a mistake, but we have our angel guide, which has got a lot of resources, including a load of network names, Tarek, for you that might be interesting, that you can explore, and some resources from Andy from previous years. And it also has our readiness survey. So if you're thinking, what should be my next step? I think I want to do this. I think I want to explore if investment's right for me. Do this survey, will help us get a read of where you're strong, where you're weak, in terms of being ready to raise investment, and we can help connect you into the right support to fill the gaps. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, Andy. I really appreciate it. I think we're about to go back into the main room. Any last questions, guys, about Turn support or for Andy in the last minute or so that we have before the chat, before our breakout ends?
I'm happy for my email to be shared as well if anyone has any questions to email me. And Andy, you asked a question regarding, I've put a message in the chat to you about social ethical aspects of investing. Are they considered more important for investors today? Yes, a little bit, as long as there's a solid economic model there. But if it's social and the world's going in that direction, such as sustainability or climate, then it's definitely considered important, especially if they are climate or social based investor.
But you'd always look at business case first, then like the social ethical angle. So
interestingly, depending on the impact, if it's like super high impact and sustainable or social, then I look at that, and then I would want to know, like, hey, is there a feasible business model that sits in this environment? And if so, then we can take it forward 100%. But if the impact is going to be massive, then let's just talk about impact, and then we can talk about, as long as there's a feasible business model somewhere. That's what matters, really. Yeah.
Have you started making social impact investments, Andy?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
That's really interesting. And that's an area that also Turn, from a social investment standpoint, is also very interested in for social enterprise models. So if anyone listening to this or in the room is looking at social enterprise, social investment, then that was also a space we play in. Thank you, Andy. Last 10 seconds. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Guys, thank you for joining. I really hope you enjoyed the session. I know I did. And we'll go back to the main room, have a 5-minute break, and then continue with the session. Thanks, guys.